When German prisoners of war stepped off the train in Texas, they thought they were walking into a trap. Red Cross workers handed them coffee and donuts. Real coffee. Fresh donuts. Some prisoners refused to eat, certain the food was poisoned. Private Hans Lammersdorf saw his barracks, real beds, clean blankets, a wood stove, and sat on the floor for 3 hours, staring at nothing. Nazi propaganda had promised torture, starvation, execution. Instead, he got a mattress. 370,000 German soldiers would experience this same psychological break between 1943 and 1946. What they discovered would save some of them, haunt others, and reveal a dark truth about who America really protected. But first, they had to survive the journey that convinced them they were already dead. During the Atlantic crossing, a Wehrmacht sergeant told younger prisoners, "Make your peace with God. Americans don't take prisoners, they just delay the execution." Many wrote final letters to their families. One soldier carved his name into the ship's hold, certain no one would know what happened to him. When they landed, they were registered, not interrogated, photographed, not beaten. American doctors examined them. Lice, malnutrition, infected wounds, and treated all of it. Men who hadn't seen a dentist in 3 years got their teeth fixed. One prisoner passed out after his first full meal. Months of thin soup and black bread had destroyed his stomach. Within weeks, these skeletal men began to look human again. And that's when the real confusion started. By 1945, over 500 prisoner-of-war camps existed across 46 states. Texas alone held 50,000 prisoners. They were everywhere. Wisconsin farms, Tennessee valleys, Colorado mountains. Every camp followed one rule, the Geneva Convention. 3 meals a day, 8-hour work limit, 80 cents daily pay. Recreation, education, entertainment. But the word camp doesn't capture what this actually meant. And when prisoners saw the truth, it shattered everything they believed about America. You spent 2 years in frozen trenches eating horse meat, watching friends die. Now you wake up in Colorado with sunlight through real windows and a mattress under your back. Breakfast is eggs, toast, coffee with sugar. After roll call, work detail. Picking cotton in Mississippi, logging in Oregon, helping a German-American farmer in Iowa who speaks a dialect from home. 8 hours, not 12, not 16. Lunch brought to the field, sandwiches, fruit, lemonade. A guard offers you a cigarette. You take it, still waiting for the punishment. It never comes. Dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, pie. After dinner, a Gary Cooper Western in the rec hall, or English classes, or volleyball. Werner Burkhardt, former Panzer crewman, "I ate better as a prisoner in America than I ever did as a soldier. Better than my family was eating in bombed-out Hamburg." That's when he knew. Everything they'd been told was a lie. But the real transformation happened outside the camps. In rural areas desperate for labor, German prisoners of war became essential workers. They harvested crops beside American farmers, cut timber with American loggers, and something unexpected happened. A farmer's wife in Kansas packed extra sandwiches for the German boys. A logger in Wisconsin taught a prisoner how to sharpen an axe, small gestures repeated daily that contradicted everything the propaganda had promised. Some prisoners were invited inside farmhouses to eat at American tables with American families. They saw photographs on mantelpieces, sons in uniform overseas fighting Germany, and still these families shared their food, asked about the prisoners' families, treated them like human beings. Kurt Rossmeisel worked on an Iowa farm. The farmer's son had been killed at Normandy. The farmer never mentioned it. He taught Kurt English, let him listen to the radio, gave him magazines. "That man's son died because of my country, and he still treated me with dignity. But this kindness wasn't universal. In the South, German prisoners of war could eat in restaurants that refused service to black Americans. They could use whites-only bathrooms, water fountains, waiting rooms. A train station in Louisiana, German prisoners sat in the whites-only waiting room while black American GIs stood outside in the rain. Some German prisoners were horrified. Others, the committed Nazis, saw it as proof Hitler was right. America was fighting fascism abroad while practicing its own version at home. But inside the camps, an even darker war was being fought. The hardcore Nazis didn't disappear behind barbed wire. SS officers, true believers, they organized, intimidated, controlled. Any prisoner who praised America was labeled a traitor. Kangaroo trials were held in barracks at night. Prisoners accused of treason were judged by other prisoners. At Camp Tonkawa in Oklahoma, a prisoner named Johannes Kunze informed guards about a planned escape. On November 4, 1943, fellow prisoners beat him to death while guards watched, unable to stop it. Over 100 wounds. 5 prisoners were later hanged for the murder. This happened in other camps too. Beatings, intimidation, terror. American authorities tried to separate the Nazis, creating special camps for the worst offenders. But ideology doesn't live in buildings, it lives in minds. So the US military tried something unprecedented: a denazification program. Prisoners were required to watch films of concentration camp liberations: Dachau, Buchenwald, Auschwitz, mountains of corpses, gas chambers. Many refused to believe it. Propaganda, they said. Hollywood tricks. How could the nation they served be built on such monstrosity? Some walked out in denial. Others sat in stunned silence. A few broke down completely. Friedrich von Feilich. When I saw those films, I knew my life had been a lie. Everything I believed, it was all in service of evil. I wanted to die. But he didn't die. He had to figure out how to live with what he'd learned. And then Germany surrendered. By May 1945, something strange happened in the camps. Depression, anxiety, fear of going home. Germany was destroyed. Cities bombed to rubble. The economy shattered. Food scarce. Many prisoners had formed connections in America. Friendships with farmers, bonds with guards. Some had fallen in love with local women, though it was forbidden. A prisoner in Nebraska. I don't know if I want to come home. There is nothing to come home to. Repatriation dragged through 1946. Ships carried prisoners back across the Atlantic. When Werner Kritzler left Camp Hearn in Texas, the farmer gave him an address. When things settle down, write to me. Maybe I can help you come back. Werner kept that paper for 3 years before mailing the letter. Thousands of former prisoners of war did the same. By the 1950s, hundreds of former prisoners had immigrated back to America. Some married American women. Others came for work. Hans Werner returned to Mississippi in 1951. He opened a restaurant, married a school teacher, raised 3 children. Those years taught me that people are just people. That made all the difference. But not everyone found redemption. Some former prisoners remained committed Nazis until they died. Others struggled with guilt and shame. The camps couldn't erase what happened in Europe. They could only show an alternative, and for many, that was enough. In 1988, a reunion was held in Texas. Former guards and former prisoners gathered at Camp Hearn, now an empty field. Men who'd been enemies 45 years earlier embraced like old friends. Former guard. We learned they were just like us, scared kids who wanted to go home. Former prisoner Eric Schmidt. You taught us that the enemy has a face. That changed everything. But another prisoner refused to join. He stood at the edge, smoking. When asked why, because some of us never forgot what we were fighting for. The camps were an experiment. Could you defeat an ideology with kindness? The results were mixed. Some prisoners became ambassadors for democracy, others remained Nazi sympathizers, most fell somewhere in between. There's a cemetery in Texas where German prisoners of war are buried. Men who died from accidents, illness, violence. Local volunteers maintain the graves, place flowers on Memorial Day alongside American veterans. It's a small gesture, but it represents something larger. In 1997, Friedrich von Feilich returned to Camp Como in Mississippi. The camp was gone. An elderly woman approached. "Were you here during the war?" He nodded. "My father worked at the camp. He said you boys taught him that enemies are just people on the other side of a bad idea." Friedrich smiled. "And you taught us that Americans weren't the monsters we'd been told about. That lesson saved my life." They stood together, looking at the empty field where a prison camp once stood, where enemies became something else, where the fog of war lifted just enough for human beings to recognize each other. That's the story history doesn't always tell, but it's the one worth remembering.